Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Planet-Based Healing, Episode 2, a Project Positive Planet project. Today we have Tim Collier, co-founder of CollierConcepts, Lambert, VP of Marketing with Green Flower, and myself, Stephanie West, founder of We Consultants and Caribbean We.
Good morning.
Hi, Leah, Tim, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. And today's focus is CBD on Green Friday. And Leah, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, definitely. So happy to say I've been a part of the cannabis industry for several years, on the above board side, as we say. Grew up in Northern California, so the flower was a part of my life long before legalization, but was also in California when we were the first medical state to legalize back in 1996. In more recent years, though, have spent a better part of my time focused on the media and marketing side of the industry. Did that at first with a news group called The Cannabis out of Colorado as the first mainstream produced content site focused on the industry. It was owned by Denver Post and Digital First Media. So moved on from there to heading up media operations at a company called Weedmaps, which is the largest tech company, but they're best known for their app-based platform for finding new local dispensaries, both medicinal and recreational. From there, I went on to a company called Voda for a few years to help them out, build their segment into this industry. And then got swooped up by Green Flower. So it's been quite a venture over the last several years, and I've worked with the industry from different perspectives. Everything, as we pretty much say, some say from seed to sale, I say from seed to social, have been tied to some other aspect along the way at any given time. So very much enjoy it. Based out of Southern California, so right here in the epicenter of both, technically I'd say the legal and just illicit market probably in the world, but definitely enjoy being here. So thanks for having me, Stephanie.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lance.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Definitely.
And Miss Tim Collier.
Yes. Hello, everyone. On this Friday, the days are running together as we're in our global pause, but rounding the end of the COVID global challenge here on Friday, the 24th of April, 2020. Really delighted to be here with you all. Lance, thank you for joining us, and truly excited to share with our spa, wellness, hospitality community the excellent educational foundation of Green Flower, and clearly see the future. And that's kind of the first question I'd like to pose, Stephanie, if it's okay. Where are we in the future of the combination of hospitality, plant-based healing, and our post-COVID time together? Do you think that cannabis, CBD, plant-based healing, Lance, will lead us through a deeper healing and a resurgence of agriculture, plant-based healing, and what I feel is the burgeoning holistic hospitality as we have a new normal? What are your thoughts on that?
I think 100%. Something that I've been around it a bit over the years growing up. My mom, I'd say unofficially, was a hippie, so I've always been around and exposed to more of the Eastern medicine as well as holistic. I practice holistic medicine myself as far as anything that I need, pull from both sides of the proverbial fence. I think it really is a movement that's occurring, and even more so than ever, based on not just epidemics, but pandemics that we're seeing in recent years. It's something that I think people thought was gone by way of the bubonic plague and black plague, but viruses are more prevalent on this earth than ever. And I think it's kind of interesting not to get too philosophical, but just what's going on with the earth as a whole. I know that's one thing that is awesome about an audience like this that actually understands things at a spiritual level and knows that there's a bigger picture. And Mother Nature is trying to tell us something, I think, through this whole exercise. And in my opinion, Mother Nature also has the answers. I mean, just myself, looking at how much I lean on ginseng and turmeric above and beyond the attributes that I find in cannabis. So I really think that we're going to start to realize, and the scientists are finally, and doctors are finally going to have a louder voice at the table. Because that's one thing that's been a challenge, I'd say, more so in Western medicine, is just that heavy influence of capitalism. So finding a balance as we all come together, especially again on a pandemic, something that affects everything from first world to third world, every continent, every corner of the earth. We really need to accept everyone's ideologies towards solution and not just go straight to the proverbial petri dish. So that's what I'm hoping to see come out of this, honestly.
I really appreciate that perspective. I think I would resonate completely. The biodiversity, the unity in diversity, the uniqueness that we all bring to our contributions to the planet, and then looking to the plant kingdom, such a healing force that I think our reverence and respect for Mother Earth is now on a more prominent, and may we keep this going forward. Thank you for that feedback. Stephanie, I'm just curious for you, post-COVID, how are you moving into the new normal?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know that we know what the new normal is. These webinars are really keeping me going and motivated and positive, and I hope they're helpful for other people. I think the opportunities are going to be endless. I think, particularly in our spa and wellness community, we may need to reinvent a little bit, particularly in the first phase. And we'll be continuing those conversations and how we go about that. But I think in every crisis, there's more good people and opportunity than there is negative. And we're going to see some amazing things happen after this.
Yes. Breakthrough. A
I
breakthrough.
believe in humanity over anything. So
absolutely. And our hearts go out to those that are dealing with such rapid life changes. Yes. And
yeah, every day I hear a new story, but we have to build community and hold each other up, I think.
That's right.
Very true. Excellent.
So Lance, let's hear more about CBD, because I'm kind of one of those people where I've become one of my nearest and dearest friends the last couple of years, but I know it's great, but I don't really get it. CBD, but I don't have a lot of the knowledge.
I'd love to jump into it. So I promise not to geek out too much, because I get excited when I talk about this, because I do have that level of respect. But really, just to get into the basics. Most people are familiar with cannabis in some aspect or another of their life, whether it be something that they had tried back in the earlier years, or something that they utilize from a food grade level. I mean, hemp seed-based solutions around flour and such. I mean, it's in so many aspects. And I won't get too deep into the history, but it's something that wasn't suppressed prior to Prohibition. So about a century ago, it really was the foundational crop to this country. And looking at other countries, China is a good example. They really built their dynasty on hemp as being one of their major cash crops, and still to this day, one of the largest export crops out of China. Last I checked, they were, I think, about 72%, but at one point they were over 90% of the hemp production in the world. And while a majority of those went towards textiles, there's also even commercial applications, believe it or not, concrete that's utilized with hemp as an additive for strengthening. But it is one of those things where obviously we look at hemp.
Lance, I'm going to jump in because this is all really great information. I know some of our audios are a little tweaky. Can you turn your microphone off and back on and see if that helps it up a little bit?
Yeah, because I'm hearing a little bit of an echo. Are you hearing an echo from me as well? I know I'm hearing an echo from you, but then Kim, you're coming in perfect.
Kim's got the golden sunshine today.
I think it must be that unicorn onesie I wear.
There you go. Is that? I'm still hearing a little bit of it too.
That's better.
Is it better? Okay.
So?
Right. So yeah. So just going back to talking about hemp, because hemp is where we primarily derive CBD from. And what is CBD? So there's two primary cannabinoids that are associated with the cannabis plant. And one thing to clarify here too, if you look at the classification for this plant, there really isn't any sort of sidebar path for hemp. Hemp and marijuana, it's the same plant. It's like comparing watermelon to seedless watermelon is the best way I could put it. Just one has been genetically weaned out to no longer have seeds, just like cannabis has had a certain level of THC weaned out to bring it down to 0.3% or less that qualifies it as hemp.
Perfect.
So the two primary cannabinoids that come out of this plant are CBD and THC, and we're talking about cannabidiol. So cannabidiol does not have the same as far as psychoactive effects that THC has. So it's a cannabinoid out of hundreds of cannabinoids in the plant that didn't really get a lot of attention until more recent years. And one of the things that really catapulted it, if you all notice, in the last few years specifically, we had the 2018 Farm Bill. And when the 2018 Farm Bill came into effect is when all of a sudden at a federal level, they descheduled all hemp. So this was an interesting move. And the thing that's been a little bit of a challenge is USDA versus FDA, right? So right now, USDA is who manages the hemp program in this country. FDA is the one that's getting involved because it's being used so heavily on the consumer side. So obviously, for obvious reasons, the FDA wants to get involved as well.
Don't forget the DEA involved in this conversation too.
Yeah, there's a few other initials, and DEA is definitely one of them as well. And it's funny you mention that, kid, because from a logistics standpoint, so just to name a handful of the largest hemp producers in this country, Oregon State, Colorado State, believe it or not, Kentucky, South Carolina. So Montana, yes. So logistically, and even Minnesota now has a hemp program. They're everywhere thanks to that Farm Bill. But logistically, it's a challenge because, again, if the plant is seedless or non, when it's traveling, of course, interstate over state lines, the officer at the checker at the weigh station doesn't know the difference between, THC flower, as we're now calling it, and CBD flower. So there are some challenges associated with it. But nonetheless, that Farm Bill is really what catapulted CBD to become essentially, like we were talking about the other day, Kim, almost like a hero cannabinoid, right? Mm-hmm. And I won't say it won't be the last hero cannabinoid, and we'll get into that. Some of the things that it does as far as attribution, and again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not making recommendations, but this is just input based on studies that have occurred. Gosh, the list I have dates all the way back to 1970. So there's been some extensive studies put around anxiety, depression, migraines, nausea, inflammatory, just general pain, muscle spasticity. So there's all these different elements. And the reason being is because CBD really attaches on to the CB2 receptors. So again, we won't go too deep into this, but you have your endocannabinoid system. So if you all get a chance to look up ECS, it's the endocannabinoid system. You have your CB1 receptors, which are predominant above the neckline, and then your CB2 receptors are more predominant below. And so a scientist put it really well as far as explaining to me the difference between, say, utilizing CBD versus ibuprofen. We'll just pick on. And he said the difference between the two is we aren't designed to be able to accept that Western medicine, right? That chemical version of a painkiller. And the best way I explained it back to him was, so it sounds like Legos and Legos when you're talking about CBD and your endocannabinoid system versus Legos and Lincoln Logs. It's not that you couldn't build a building out of it, but the fact of the matter is they just don't interlink like they're intended to. And he went on to explain that this is why you can absorb or you can actually take up to 800 milligrams of ibuprofen a day because your actual absorption rate is only about 50% because it just doesn't jive with your body. So CBD really does make an impact, and it does obviously interact with our body. Unlike some things as well, your uptake, your body absorbs as much as it can, and what it can absorb, it passes through. But the fact of the matter is that people are so excited about it because it's able to focus on ailments that need attention without bringing in the psychoactive. There's a lot of people who have just had experience where they don't feel comfortable with what's going on from a mental standpoint when they utilize anything associated with cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
So, is my audio? I'm sorry, I hear it echoing a little bit.
Interesting.
How's the audio for everyone out there?
Hopefully,
you hear Lance clearly. Hopefully, it's without too much.
It's not perfect on my end, but it's not terrible.
Yeah, you sound a little bit better too. So it's getting better.
Well, great.
Excellent.
So, do you want to take us maybe into, Lance, what Green Flower does and the education that you have around the CBD?
Yeah, definitely. So getting into it a little bit further, and I'll give a little additional background and insight too, because this actually plays a role in how we got into it. We were just talking the other day, which was nice, about Charlotte Figi, who unfortunately passed away about a week ago. She was really a trailblazer in CBD being looked at for grand mal and epileptic seizures. And this is kind of on a tangent for me. I moved out to Colorado when adult use legalized back in 2014. And this path that had began to open up thanks to a certain cultivars, we call it Charlotte's Web. So maybe some have heard of it. Stanley Brothers had created this high CBD cultivar with very low THC. And that helped out Charlotte for years with her seizures. Unfortunately, we lost her, but it was one thing that, again, to have someone
Lance, we still have some background noise. I think I don't need to talk that much, but do you want to jump out and come back in and see if that's better?
Definitely.
People are engaged and want to get this, and
I'll do that.
Okay, sorry.
And just to recap what Lance was saying, very significant in the history of the evolution and public recognition and embracing CBD is through Charlotte Figi, who was a very young and the first what we call a cannabis refugee or a CBD refugee, where her entire family sold everything from where they lived and moved to Colorado when they found the healing remedy of a strain of cannabis with a high CBD content. So higher CBD, lower THC, and she went from multiple spasms and to reducing to just a few a month, and it was able to be attributed to the healing properties of CBD to relieve the spasms and epilepsy. And that's why the government then went into the FDA has now approved this drug called Epidiolex, which is a natural form of CBD, the plant-derived form of CBD. Very significant. On the day that Charlotte died, the FDA opened the possibility for Epidiolex to have a larger market, more people to be able to heal and benefit from the natural extract of cannabidiol from the cannabis plant.
Kim did a good job picking right up where I left off.
I used to tap dance. Can you tell?
Phenomenal. Okay, that's better. Perfect.
Yes.
I was like, hey, if nothing else, headphones. So
Brilliant.
Perfect. I still hear it a little bit in my ear, but as long as it sounds better to you. So yeah, that's exactly what I was going to, just to get in really quick on some of the things in recent history that have really made an impact on CBD, and that story around Charlotte, and the story around the movement that we saw from those that were looking to a solution outside of Western medicine, right? Outside of utilizing something that might actually be detrimental or poisonous to our bodies, and instead trying to find something that is healing, right? Because that's what all of us are about, finding the things that have the least amount of impact but the highest amount of result. So I will share my screen just now. So let me know this.
We'd all like to share that this is in no way taking the place of your consulting with your doctor, medical professionals. This is just a conversation on what we are able to share, but it is in no way medical advice. So just making that clear for everyone on the line and moving forward. Hello, beautiful.
100% true. Yes, and there's Charlotte when she was younger. When she was 6, she actually is 13. Again, just so impressed with how far she's come. We did an article on her story years ago, and just phenomenal to see. I mean, again, she is a hero to a lot of us in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to offer, so at Green Flower, really it is education first. That's one thing we pride ourselves as being the global leader in cannabis education, and have a phenomenal learning management system. This LMS is all inclusive as far as what's available for the general public. Love working with you, Kim. This is one thing, if you all get a chance, and Kim will share it just now, we kicked off a give back campaign, because a lot of companies in the industry are trying to do what they can to make an impact during this COVID pandemic. It's phenomenal here too. There's some companies that are actually amidst making, hand sanitizer because they were they have the means with concentration to do so, or that are making masks. For us, we had education to provide. So that's one thing that we wanted to do. Again, Kim will get into that just now, but definitely I would love for everyone to take advantage of it. And what we're talking about is the fundamentals of cannabis, which is a great entry level. In my opinion, it really is kind of a 101 when it comes to education in this category. But having said that, I've had friends that have been in the industry for years that took it because everyone has a bit more time at home, a little less going to the beach and such. But they've said even they've learned something. Individuals have been around the industry for quite some time. But the one thing I wanted to share was the CBD Certificate Program. And just to get into some of the top level, really what the focus is understanding the actual elements of the plant, which all this gets into, but going down to the actual introduction. So you'll see here just talking about CBD and cannabidiol, so defining, the actual CBD cultivar, cannabinoid itself, and where it's popular in so many cultivars. And then comparing and contrasting hemp and CBD, because again, CBD is something that's technically a derivative of both sides of this plant. It can be pulled out from what people call the marijuana side, and it can be pulled out from what people reference as the hemp side. But then also identifying the differences, like we were talking about, between CBD and THC, because there is such that variable as far as what the effects are. And then we look at CBD as a medicine. And again, to Kim's point, while we do have doctors that were tied to the certification program, again, it's due to the limited amount of studies, especially in this country, because of it being a Schedule I. There's only so much information on this plant and studies that have been done. Again, I could give you a list of maybe 4 or 5 dozen since 1970, which is fractional compared to other studies. But we do get into the therapeutic mechanisms of CBD. So just talking about what the true attributes are, how it interacts with our endocannabinoid system. Again, just looking at comparisons to the other predominant cannabinoid, and then explaining the importance of quality control. And this is something that I wouldn't mind getting into right quick. So you'll find with my last company, they were based out in Minnesota, and I even saw CBD shops in Minnesota. I know they've popped up everywhere. There's obviously some national chains, but quality matters. It's really important to make sure that you are using CBD that has been tested. There's a lot of CBD extracted out there that, again, comes from more of the textile side of the industry. It's not typically tested. And it doesn't matter if it's being used topically or induced. Obviously, we still want to be cognizant of what we're putting on and in our bodies. And that is a good segue into different types of CBD products. So this is where it's really fun, and I'll give you all just a quick story on how I first really realized what CBD can do. I had a problem a few years ago where I had diverticulitis, and it was in my intestine. They gave me 2 different types of antibiotics, and I couldn't eat anything for the first 24 hours, and then I could only be on a liquid diet the next 24 to 48 hours. That first few hours was hard because here I was on this heavy drug that they had given to me that I was having reactions, both my stomach was hurting, I was nauseous, and then I had this pain. I actually utilize what we call an 18-to-1, and oftentimes you all will see this when looking at CBD-based products. They have ratios, so everything from a 24-to-1 I've seen down to a 1-to-1. And what this simply is saying is how many parts CBD to how many parts THC. And you might ask, well, we were just talking about how hemp, as an example, can only have 0.3% or less THC in that actual biomass. Well, THC does help with the delivery of CBD into our system. It helps with the absorption or the uptake of this cannabinoid into our system. So even if you want something that has a minute percentage, that's ideal if you have that to utilize. So I used an 18-to-1 patch from a company called Pure Ratio out of San Diego, and I literally put it right on my rib cage where I was having this pain. And within about 45 minutes, the pain started subsiding and the nausea went away. Again, this is just my firsthand experience I've had with it, and I sold on CBD after that. But it's a good example, again, of the ways you can consume. There's, if you all haven't seen it before, obviously there's oils, specifically massage oils. There's topicals, there's transdermals, there's elixirs, tonics, all the way down to a pill form and oil extract form that you can literally squeeze under your tongue. Again, I love how Kim pointed that out. This is just, very much in sync with Eastern medicine as far as saying, that it's a therapeutic, that there are no specific, ailments that it has been proven by the FDA to handle. But it's hard to deny the facts that are out there and the results that people have seen, and again, myself firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
So again, getting in a little bit more treating with CBD. So the medicinal purpose, like I just discussed, looking at dosing protocols with CBD. Start slow, go low is something that we used. It was a campaign in Colorado. It's been a campaign throughout Canada. And then just giving an overview of CBD use for pets and children. This is kind of interesting as well, because for those that don't know, every mammal, not insects, but every mammal has an endocannabinoid system. So you'll find on there, a good example is a friend with a golden retriever, which is known to have hip issues in its later years. He started giving the dog CBD, all of a sudden had less of an issue walking and laying down. It's because that animal has an endocannabinoid system just like we do. So we get into a bit of that as well. And then myths and misconceptions. Again, this is one thing. It's tough when you're talking about a plant that's been suppressed for so many years, especially in the Western civilization, really understanding what the myths are versus the misconceptions. And then last, like I talked about, just getting into quality control. For legal landscape, again, so this is something we talk about, is that 2018 Farm Bill, and the fact that subsequently deregulated hemp or any product from cannabis plant that's 0.3% or less. To get into a little bit more of that, just because it's been descheduled and the USDA said hemp is okay to grow, there are still hemp programs that have to be launched in your local state. So a good example is Montana, Minnesota, Oregon, Washington, Colorado. California was actually a little slow to it, believe it or not. There's so much emphasis on the THC side of this plant that it took a bit longer. But several states have already signed on to and built out their hemp program for production. And we're quickly looking at this as a cash crop. And again, I'll just give an example firsthand. In my backyard is Camarillo and Oxnard, and definitely one of the strawberry capitals as far as growing strawberries in this state, if not this country. A lot of the growers have transitioned their crops to hemp from strawberries. And if anyone knows the price of strawberries, they obviously get a pretty good penny per pound versus other produce. But even the local growers saw just how much more potential. And not to get too far down that road, but to give you an idea of the spectrum, high quality hemp that can be utilized for commercial use can be anywhere from $50 up to $800 or $900 per pound. And to give you an idea of what the wholesale price right now is for THC flower in the country, that's $1,200. So that gives you an idea of just how valuable people see this aspect of our industry based on opportunity and the fact that you can do widespread distribution versus any THC products, which, not to play down, there's 33 states that have legalized cannabis at some level or another, whether it be only medicinally or recreationally or both. Colorado would be a good example of that, where they have both a medical and in an adult use or rec industry side by side. On a side note, there's 14 additional states that are going to be voting this year. It's supposed to be on the ballot. We'll see what happens with everything going on currently. But if all of those states were to pass, amazingly, there would be 47 states that have legalized cannabis at some level, everywhere from just cannabidiol all the way to full recreational use. I think it really speaks volumes. And Kim, I know we've talked about this a little bit again. I know you're shaking your head. I really do have to give credit to CBD, because CBD opened the door to conversations like these, to talk to individuals and to groups about how this really can help them, no matter what the application. So really, it is something that we saw, that exponential growth and exception. And now approximately 73% of the populace of the U.S. Actually are in support of cannabis, rather it be for medical only and or recreational. So when we have 3/4, and I've been on the Hill, I got to be a board member of ATACH, the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, and went and lobbied in DC, something I never in my life thought I would be doing. And it was nice to see that it was I almost call it a nonpartisan, but it's definitely a bipartisan topic, where you have both sides of the proverbial fence, both on the Republican and Democratic side. They're saying, yeah, this is a good thing.
Yes.
I think the motivations are slightly different. We know, not to get too political, some people, the energy goes where the money flows. For others, it is more so about the big picture and our civilization and the earth as a whole, taking care of Mother Nature. But all the same, the fact that you have, again, so much support, both from the Senate and from the Congress and from Republicans and Democrats on moving these things forward is pivotal. And every little step makes a difference, that's for sure.
Pivotal and absolutely evolutional. Thank you for that, Lance. Excellent overview, and love the sneak peek to the CBD certificate of Green Flower. A quick opportunity and a gift to everyone from Green Flower. If you would like to take their Fundamentals of Cannabis course, it is on offer complimentary through the month of April. Please log on through CollierConcepts.com and take absolute advantage and opportunity and evolutionary opportunity to have that Fundamentals of Cannabis certificate in your understanding of this amazing plant. And also to add that yesterday I was on a webinar with Brightfield Group, who is the leading research aggregate of data on all things cannabis. This webinar yesterday was specific about CBD. So to bring in some data and to further what Lance has shared with us, there were, at the end of 2019, 3,500 CBD brands. 3,500 CBD brands, according to Brightfield Research Group. That is clearly too many, but like Lance said, follow the grow or follow the money, but if you all would continue to follow your education and really have a good foundation in understanding how important this plant will be, hemp specifically, for food, for fiber, for medicine, for fuel, right down to the roots and references in Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine on healing with raw cannabis as well. Raw hemp, right down to the root as well as the leaf, and having raw teas for the acidic or pH balancing benefits of the body, or how we respond, because we indeed do respond. Possibly this plant is here for the planet and people. That's what we're coming around to realize. After
very well put.
Ayurvedic medicine recognizes, Chinese medicine recognizes. Please look to research from Raphael Meshulam, from the research that has been done in the country of Israel, and their discovery of THC, and also the happiness molecule, which is coming into all of this as well.
Very well put. And that is one good thing to touch on right quick, Kim, is as far as studies go, both from a medicinal standpoint and from a scientific standpoint, by far, Tel Aviv is the capital. I was fortunate enough to go out there and speak to them at the University of Canada. Yeah, being a cancer survivor myself, and I guess I should. That's my background on my passion for this plant is being a cancer survivor. More recently, dealing with the CIU with chronic hives. It's helped me with that as well. But what they have going on out there, and to share a quick story, and I think you know Steve D'Angelo, a friend of ours, he was kicking off and he was the keynote speaker. But then the head of university jumped in right afterwards. That's what fascinated me, is he really opened up everyone's eyes and sharing that they've uncovered 900 different cannabinoids over there, whereas we're at about 335 based on studies that we've uncovered here. So again, we keep talking about CBD and THC, but there's so many other things. There's CBG that's an anti-inflammatory. There's CBN, cannabidiol, that is a natural sleep inhibitor. So there's so many different attributes, and they're looking at all of them. And the thing that they did is they took some of the top cancers, prostate, breast, colon, and they actually did experiments. And this is all Petri dish. I think they just moved to human studies this year, but they were. Yeah.
Sorry, would those be considered clinical studies, which is what we realize we need to move into? Okay.
Yeah, they are clinical and they are funded. That's the thing that's important, is they're actually seeing funding from around the world. One fund coming out of Australia from a wealthy individual had, I believe, a niece or nephew that had an issue that he knew that cannabis might have the answer. And really, so looking at these Petri dishes where you had hundreds of these cells down to dozens post-treatment. But the very interesting thing, and this kind of goes against some of the stuff that we believed around things like Rick Simpson oil, right? RSO, that you can make from any cannabis that you get your hands on. It was cultivar specific. So this strain, as some people call it, this strain only worked with prostate, but not with colon or with breast, and vice versa. So the fact that they're getting down to that level of study is huge. I mean, and there's other plants I know deserve the attention too, but this is the one that's really the enigma. And I used to think it's taboo when people would say, "Oh, it's the miracle plant." I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. You're just saying that because of the psychoactive elements of it. Then you learn how much else it has to offer us, and it's almost limitless. It's two Italian scientists. Here's what really quick for it. They discovered THCP and CBDP, which they found to be up to 20x more potent than THC and CBD. So it's just a constant evolution and understanding. It's just more time and effort that needs to be put into it. But you're right, it is so much more than anyone can understand as far as what is out there for us to look into about it. So,
and that is so absolutely true. In fact, it's evolutionary, and there's also an elevation that's happening. And we used to say people are getting high, or there's a stoner mentality. We're flipping that understanding to realize this is an elevation. This is an enlightenment. This is really raising an understanding of plant-based medicine and its effect on our body. So not any health claims here, just saying this is so worth taking a look at, especially for us as individuals, our health, our wellness, what it gives back to the planet. Let's just chat a bit about how hemp helps the planet, and also one quick rewind, the importance of testing your hemp-based products.
Yeah.
Hemp is a bioaccumulator. Those roots we talked about literally pull heavy metals, toxins, pesticides from the soil through the plant. It is cleaning the soil. It's been used in mediation of radioactive.
Chernobyl.
Yep. That's right. So that's just absolutely non-negotiable that we have third-party independent lab testing for all hemp-derived products that we are ingesting therapeutically, putting on topically in any form, also eating those hemp seeds you're getting at the grocery store. Y'all put them on your grocery list. All these fatty acids you'll ever need, brain and power and protein. But the testing. Can you tell us how we can better bring science to health and healing through the hemp plant?
Yeah, testing is a very pivotal element, and that's one thing. It's been the biggest differentiator from. We try to be PC, so some say the traditional market, some say the legacy market. But speaking of the plant in general, that was what I saw as the biggest attribute to legalization of this, was a safe and secure source of this medicine and of this plant in general. So to your point, again, for most of the country, will go as little as 10 years ago. Wherever they source for cannabis is where they source for cannabis. They didn't know what it was, what was in it, which to your point, pesticides, herbicides. I mean, there's so many elements. And you're spot on, Kim. This plant is part of the phytoremediation class. So it literally just soaks everything up. And I met the Canadian that introduced back in 2009, utilizing hemp plants in Chernobyl to start wicking out some of the isotopes and obviously the radiation. And it's been phenomenally successful because of that. Having said that, that's why it's so pivotal to make sure that you are sourcing it from a safe place. Because a good example, and I don't mean to pick on China, but we know they aren't always on the up and up with certain things. And a good example of that is related to CBD. So a lot of the CBD that I referenced, which is intended for textile or commercial use, maybe plant matter, biomass for feeding animals, etc. Right? Something that's not intended for human to induce. They're allowing that to be produced on fields that were not approved for human-based agriculture. So the reason being is, to your point exactly, heavy metals, fallout, whatever that soil is contaminated with, they're smart enough to know that we can't let human-based agriculture resources come from this field, from this hectare. It needs to be from somewhere else. So grow what you want. Grow cotton is a good example as well, right? Alongside hemp. The problem, again, is the exporters aren't labeling this as such, and oftentimes they aren't testing it. So you do want to make sure. A2LA is a phenomenal organization that a majority, if not all, accredited labs in this country that support this industry are a member of. So you can go to their site and find out more. But you will find these test results.
What was that resource, Lance? I'll type in.
A2LA.
Oh, A2LA, of course. And that is Americans for Safe Access. That is the nonprofit that is helping to fund and bring to the U.S. population safe cannabis, safe CBD. It's AmericansForSafeAccess.org. Sorry to interject. I will put that in, but go on their website. They have a great CBD for patients guidebook. That's so cool to read.
Exactly. So, and I'm sorry, I have a few examples downstairs, so I didn't bring them up, but I do have a few iterations. One is Tribe, is a CBD medicine I use right there on the back side of the box, on the backside label. You have the test results and when it was tested. So I love the fact that CBD companies that are doing it right are really referencing the rules and regulations associated with the THC side of the plant. They are doing the testing, the rigorous handling, making sure they're following things like GMP standards in production and processing. So all of these things matter because, again, I don't have to tell this group, our body is our temple, good in, good out. So you need to make sure when it comes to quality that you're putting in quality, no matter if it is medicine or homeopathic supplements, placebos. It doesn't matter what it is. But it's the same thing as you would think with food and drink. If you don't know if it's safe, then don't chance utilizing that, and make sure to find somewhere that is secure that you can. And there's, again, plenty of online resources. You can get it shipped to you. That's the interesting part, is there's companies that are very well accredited that you can find online that you can purchase CBD from if you don't have a local source in your backyard, in your neighborhood. So it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
We had some great conversation in the chat. Look at that, Stephanie. Yes, keen to mention when we spoke about Israel and Tel Aviv, our leading wellness institute, the Global Wellness Institute, is holding their conference this year. It may be live, it may be virtual. We'll see how that evolves, but it will be in Tel Aviv, in Israel, the Global Wellness Institute this year.
So that is so cool for those that can go. I mean, I was very fortunate to be able to make that trip.
I'm sure there'll be a virtual aspect as well. So we look forward to
the book I shared, Startup Nation. Israel has one of the best economies in the world and the most entrepreneurs in the world. So this book is beyond fascinating. Oh, if anyone has a chance to pick it up.
Startup Nation, Israel's economic miracle. That's it. I just ordered a book on Amazon yesterday. It was The Hemp Farmer.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And it's really trending right now in terms of understanding the the challenge and the opportunity that agriculture is experiencing with hemp, but it rounds it up for us to realize that we're on the verge, on the cusp of an agricultural renaissance. And hemp will be the leading lady in that. Lady, that's important. The female plant is what carries and really holds the higher content of CBD and cannabinoids as our body relates and receives.
Exactly.
So can we expect Collier Farms soon?
What's that?
Can we anticipate Collier Farms coming soon?
Oh, I wish. About half an acre, I sure look at it, but I don't want the FDA coming around or the DEA, not at this point. We need to wait for things to level out, and that's why we're proceeding with possibility, but proceeding with caution until our legislative bodies meet an agreement and allow us to move forward with clarity. Also here in the Pacific Northwest, the state of Idaho is very not involved or not supportive of this agricultural growth. So here in our region, we're still working that out and finding ways to raise the bar. For example, this is really cool. In Ketchum, Idaho, every year is the Hemp Building Summit. So it's bringing hemp as a product into the built environment. Hemp, what am I trying to say? Like instead of insulation, hemp wood, or hemp bricks, or blowing in hemp biofiber as a much more effective and healthier way of insulating a home, a build, a possibility for any built environment. So the Hemp Building Summit happens in Idaho, and that's help. Each state is really finding their way to be involved. So Idaho will probably be more in construction and the built environment and hemp for homes.
Because I love Idaho, but they are a little conservative. They're one of only 3 states where cannabis is still illegal. Now, essentially, if people don't understand, there's legal, there's descheduled or deregulated, and then there's still illegal. But I do hope that they come around because they have neighbors. I mean, Canada to the north is obviously legal. Washington State, Oregon State. I'm friends with the DA that's works for one of the cities right on the border. He said it is so common for people to hop over to the other side of the border and make a purchase at the dispensary and come back. And he said he's been very lax. I mean, it's small personal for consumption. So although the local law enforcement loves to kind of utilize it, he's like, most of them I've dismissed. He's like, in this day and age, I recognize Idaho is a little more conservative, but he's all, it's just weed. It's just a plant. And I was like, I love hearing that from a district attorney. Daryl Gates would be rolling in his grave, Mr. Dare. I mean, but it is one of those things. And you're right. It's as far as the opportunities, it's exponential. I don't know if any of you have ever owned a piece of hemp clothing. It lasts for years. It is incredible how long hemp lasts. And not to mention, this is also depending on where and how it's grown. It can be a perpetual crop. What I mean by that is you can obviously just grow it, just crop after crop after crop, where it's not a seasonal crop. It doesn't take years to produce like trees, like you're mentioning, but even cotton, it pales in comparison. And from a fiber standpoint, if the fibers are woven right, I was actually gifted a bowl from the first legal hemp grower in Australia when I was out there a few years ago on a trip for what they called Mardi Gras, not Mardi Gras. It's the oldest, longest running protestival, as we call it, in Australia. And I was there for the 25th anniversary. So this year, I believe, is the 28th. But he gave me this bowl, and he was like, yeah, the way that you lay the fibers, it can be, as far as tensile strength, very close to carbon fiber, which says a lot because carbon fiber is right there with metal as far as tensile strength. So phenomenal opportunities above and beyond, again, health and therapeutic. But again, from a commercial and textile, it's endless. It really is endless.
It absolutely is. The challenge we're having in the spa and wellness community in terms of the build is the standards and making sure that everything has a certification required to build in a commercial facility. So that's on the business side, but we will see more hemp in a hospitality for certain, and that leading the way. Hemp wisdom, hemp healing. Let's go back to CBD specifically. And as we wrap this up, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you, Lance.
Yeah, definitely.
What do you see if, here we are all thinking out of the box. What box? Planet-based healing as we can move forward with new possibilities, work together. We work together. specifically for CBD, what does the future hold? Or specifically for cannabinoid healing, let's go it that way, hemp and healing. What does the future hold? Unlimited possibilities? Where are you all going in directions for future forward thinking and uniting us around hemp?
CBD, I think cannabidiol is going to be here for some time. It definitely has proven itself as far as being such a qualifier for so many different elements. And it really is, it's that friendly side. It's not a good comparison. We don't like to use these metaphorically, but kind of like rubbing alcohol and alcohol, right? Rubbing alcohol is really looked at, because I tell people, I said, I don't drink, nothing against alcohol. I use it for scrapes and scratches all the time. But I think that people are going to understand that, again, CBD is more so for that dead set purpose. It's not to get high. It's not for the psychoactive benefits. It's literally to do a job. So it's gotten attention, being more of a medicinal and therapeutic through and through. I still see CBD continuing on. What you are going to find, being that it is the cannabinoid that really blazed the trail, is I see it starting to be combined with other cannabinoids. So keep an eye out, again, for CBG. That's another just natural byproduct of the hemp plant, as far as top cannabinoids it produces. So a lot of it, we had a bit of this evolution. So going back to the Farm Bill 2018, all of a sudden 2019 was the year of hemp. There were so many hemp producers. But the problem is they got into this conundrum because they were traditional farmers that thought they could scale it up like soybeans and corn and throw it in a silo once they pull it down. And you can't. This plant, although people reference it as a weed, it has a lot more maintenance associated with it than that. So we saw this excessive influx. Another thing that happened was hot crops. So Kim, if you do decide to grow on that half acre.
Well, but I'll support the farmers that do it and help that process.
I was going to say, because if anyone plans on growing, especially in a state where obviously cannabis in general is not legal, it is imperative to make sure you have the right genetics, because a lot of those producers, to your point, you mentioned FDA is more so DEA. They would come across a couple acres of a crop and the owner would say, I saw it I was on a motorcycle ride. I saw it out by Point Magoo here in Camarillo in Southern California. And they had little signs that said, this is not marijuana along the side of the road. Because you look at it, it looks like a field of dreams to any, quintessential stoner. It's like, but the point being is you never know, because it could end up being a hot crop. This is a plant. Plants evolve. And plants can evolve season to season, crop to crop. So a lot of the farmers also ended up with what we call hot crops. And that means that there was more than that 0.3% of THC. Right. But they also ended up with high CBG yielding crops. And so you are going to see, I think, an intertwining of CBD and CBG as being solutions. And then I see it as CBD and CBN. That's another great cocktail for just the therapeutic and the ease of sleep. And I'm not saying Ambien and all of the over-the-counters are going to go out of business anytime soon. But again, in light of current events, I think people are more so going to be open-minded to look into the natural solution. And that is CBD and so many cannabinoids. So it definitely has a great path ahead of it. And I agree with you. I think we're going to listen a little bit more so to Mother Nature when a bit of the dust settles around here, because that's who we need to turn to for the answers. That's where this came from. Talking to, really quick, Dr. Gordon Chu, a good friend of mine. He was at the front line of the H1N1 pandemic and has 28 patents to his name, phenomenally smart guy. And he said, it's one thing people aren't talking about. With the permafrost defrosting, that's what's allowing these ancient viruses to come out. And they're teaching the new viruses old tricks. So that's why these viruses are learning how to morph. And there's already there's 8 subsets of the original virus strain that is the COVID-19 from, and people don't think about this. Why do you think it's called COVID-19? It's not just going to be in 2019. There's going to be an iteration of COVID in 2020, 2021, just like you see with the traditional flu, or like we saw with the swine flu, or with the bubonic plague or the black plague. It evolves. So everything evolves, obviously. Right. But we need to be one step ahead of it. And sometimes fighting Mother Nature with Mother Nature is really the best end result. So CBD and the like is here to stay. That's my opinion.
That is absolutely resonate with that, and grateful for that. As we evolve, the plant evolves, and I truly wonder, I have a theory, and this is no medical claim whatsoever, but what if we have homeostasis through a balanced endocannabinoid system? Is that part of our humanity's immunological response.
Exactly.
Is a balanced endocannabinoid system contributing to a stronger immune system? It's worth a try, and all you'll do is be sleeping and relaxing and a little more calm in the process.
Right. Mm-hmm. What are the worst side effects? That's exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Can't overdose.
That's right. Yes, don't die with this.
So yeah,
so we're about to wrap. We're about 5 minutes to the hour. Stephanie, did we have any more questions from our fabulous audience? And thank you all so much for being here. This will be housed in the library at Project Positive Planet, and also available for replay anytime at CollierConcepts.com, where you can also find your link to the complimentary Fundamentals of Cannabis course from Green Flower, again, through this month of April. Also a special offer, not on the website, if there's any courses that you absolutely love and really want to hone your CBD understanding or go into even more about extraction or more of the science behind cannabis. The code for that is Collier50 to save 50%, again, just this month of April. And then ongoing, there is a Collier10 savings code as well. And it is an absolute honor to partner in education with Green Flower and bring cannabis education to the world. Project Positive Planet, if we are at just around the top of our hour. And again, are there any questions from anyone in the audience? I'm glad to see some familiar names and faces here. Oh my gosh, all of you are such treasures, and we send out so much positivity for this next step of our new normal, the evolution of the world as we grow together and maybe practice a little more simplicity, time in nature, as we all realize that planet-based healing is an answer for everyone.
Very well said. Perfect.
Oh, Stephanie, we can't hear you. You may be on mute.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Lance. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks so much. You all have a good weekend, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you. Stay well, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.